Kimber haven't been formally announced, but we know they're both going to happen. So, like, phenomenal from Arsenal so far.
Nah, I mean, look, I can't speak highly enough about not just the business that Arsenal have done, but the aggression and intent that they have shown in the early signs of this window. I think, me personally, I said at the time last year, and it ended up being true. The way Arsenal got all of their targets really in and ready for preseason, you saw how good they were in preseason, and it kind of like led into the league. I know people don't want to put too much stock into preseason, and rightfully so. Like, you can have a poor preseason and have a good season, but it does count for something, guys, right? Getting your targets in, getting them blooded into your training and the way you want to play, and having your team play the way they want to play early into preseason, leading into the season, is only good for your team. And I think you look at United last year, the way they started poorly and only really got their season on track when they got their signings in late into the window. Proof's in the pudding, man. Get your guys in, and you will look better earlier in the season. So Arsenal have kind of repeated the same trick. It looks like they're going to get all three of their big signings in right in time for preseason. I would not be surprised to see them first few weeks in the league fly past teams, look like the best team in the league, because they will have prepared. It's like Roy Keane said, right? Fail to prepare, prepared to fail, and Arsenal prepared to succeed. I can't wait, honestly, till we can talk about the Rice stuff, because I think some of the coverage around that has been absolutely hilarious. Honestly, well, I don't want to harass anyone. I don't want to send harassment to anyone, but some of the coverage of the Declan Rice deal is amateur, in my opinion.
Examples?
Eni Aluko, honestly, I think that is one of the most comical bits of punditry, whatever you want to call it, that I have seen. And again, I don't mean to send abuse at anyone, but the fact that she doubled down on that as well was embarrassing. That's the kindest way I can put it. Guy, and the thing that made me laugh the most was the people whose sole backing for her was the fact that she said, oh, I've been a director of football before. Oh, so all of a sudden then she's correct in what she's saying. Please use common sense, guys. I think it's a lost art in 2023. I think people are slowly forgetting how to use the brains that they were gifted with at birth and think for themselves. But if you truly believe that Arteta went behind his owner's back to go to Pep, who went behind their owner's back to get City to bid £90 million on a footballer that they had no interest in whatsoever, just to get Arteta's owners to pay more, you have lost the plot. You have lost the plot. It's even past cohesion or coercion or whatever the word is. This is just like business 101 here, guys. West Ham would never want to do a deal with Arsenal and City again. Arteta would be fired for his owners for going behind their back. That's just not the way business is done at the highest level. In fact, I don't think it's the way business is done at amateur level. I know she said that she's done deals like that at her level. I think her owners at the time will have heard that audio and actually raised their eyebrows, because I think it's highly suspect. And honestly, I think if you truly believe that that's what's happened between Arsenal and City, and that City never had interest, I think you've lost the plot. And there is literal proof that Pep and Declan Rice met over the summer, because there was credible evidence that City wanted the player. That's all I got to say on the matter. I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, look, when she did the whole I was right because Arsenal got him, I thought
it's pure coincidence. It's pure coincidence.
I thought it was do you know what, I will say this. Look, some of the things she's been sent and some of the things that were said to her are horrendous. There's no room for the sexism or the racism.
No.
However, I believe for many years, I've seen female pundits in the industry say we want to be treated as equals. So I'm going to treat Eni Aluko as an equal and criticize or sort of pull apart what she said, because I think it's wrong. And I think doubling down saying I got it right, I couldn't find the correlation, because for me, you would have been right if David Ornstein would have said it's just broken that Pep only put the bid in to help Arsenal. Then you would have been spot on and would have gone, oh my God, Eni Aluko, you're a genius. That didn't happen. But there is a worse story than that. Lee Gunner believes that David Ornstein, or as he calls him, David Pornstein, lied and made up the story that City bid. And he told me that all the other outlets around the world that run with the story that City bid use Ornstein as a source rather than City or West Ham. He said Ornstein made it up so that it looked like Arsenal beat City to a player. Now, any Aluko's was a mad one, but Lee Gunners is one flew over the cuckoo's nest. I could not believe what he was saying. Instead of saying, wow, my club just beat City to a £100 million. By the way, he rates Mount Rice highly. He thinks he's sensational. So you've just beaten the current treble winners to one of the best available players in Europe. And instead of going, wow, my club stepped up and paid the right money, and or my club beat City, and or Declan Rice rejected City for us. You could go with any one of those narratives. Instead, his narrative was Arsenal have lied, City never bid, to make themselves look better. And I thought to myself, how much must this guy hate his own football club to not even celebrate in the moment of, because for me, it's a little win. It's not a trophy. Doesn't mean you're going to win the Premier League, but it's a nice little psychological win over a rival to beat them in a race for a player like this.
I think it's a huge sign of intent, to be honest with you. I think psychologically, it's a big signing, in my opinion. This is the first massive signing that Arsenal have made for a player that, in my opinion, globally is wanted, right? United wanted him, City wanted him, Bayern wanted him. They haven't made a signing of that level since Ozil, really, back in 2013. So I think it's a huge psychological signing and really shows that if you didn't believe in Arsenal already, the fact that they're here to stay, believe them now, because that kind of money for a player of that level, only serious clubs make it. Lee Gunner, I'm a big fan. If you're watching this, man, I was telling Terry backstage, I think you're hilarious, and I think you're good at what you do. But again, this is crazy. Honestly, I think people are really overthinking this. Business and transfers are not this complicated, guys. It's two teams that want a player. They both bid it. David Ornstein reports what happens. This is not rocket science here, guys.
I agree with Lee that sometimes journalists will put out stories at the convenient times. If there's been a bad result, a player that signed a deal 2 weeks ago, they might hold it back. And I know this because somebody that works in the PR department of Spurs who left told me they might sign a new deal with a player the fans like, but then they've got a big game in 2 weeks. They hold back from announcing it until after that game. That way it's double bubble, or it's something to soften the blow. But that isn't lying. That's just PR and releasing things at the right time. Yes, you will get journalists that will say, in my opinion, I don't think City walked away the way in which it's been published. My view is that we're going to match Arsenal's bid, but the player said, I'll pick Arsenal. Unless Arsenal get rejected, I'll come to you. But if you both get accepted, I'm going Arsenal. And I think City walked away. Now, some of these people disagree with that, but I'm not going to get into an argument over it because at the end of the day, Arsenal got him. If they either blew City out the water, which is something to celebrate, or the player picked Arsenal over City, or both. And it doesn't really matter which it is. That's the story. To hear people twisting it into fake bids from City, journalists inventing bids, we didn't really win this, or this happened. I'm watching it thinking, I'm in the twilight zone. I'm honestly, pinch me. I must not be awake. I couldn't believe the way it was being dramatized so much. It was crazy.
Mm-hmm. Nah, look, I think it comes down to two things. I think it comes down to A, people still have this view of Declan Rice that he's overrated and that he's English and that teams around the world just, there's no way that they could be this interested in a player. And I think they refuse to believe that City and Pep, who play the way they want to play, they want their team to play, could be interested in Declan Rice, who's just a hoofball midfielder. I think that's what A comes down to. And B, it comes down to people not wanting to believe that Arsenal now have this pull that they can beat teams like City, beat teams like Bayern, beat teams like United, who, to be fair, weren't in the race, but I still think that they probably would have had the better project and package to sell to Declan Rice. They can't bring their minds around the fact that Arsenal are now at this stage and in their process that they can attract players of this level. I think that's the two things that it comes down to. And I see a lot of people in the comments also saying, who are you? What do you do? Like, in terms of me saying what Eli Aluko is saying is rubbish. Guys, if you truly believe that you have to have some standing in this game to have an opinion or to be correct about anything, then please, every single thing that Eli Aluko says, please bring it and raise it to the level it needs to be. Every single thing that a professional footballer or a professional coach says, this is now godsend. I hope you are very consistent with that. None of us have an opinion to create our own beliefs. Anything that a professional says is correct. That's the way we're going off it then.
I look at it this way. If somebody can prove to me what Eni Aluko said in terms of prove that it's right, prove what she said is absolutely spot on, and this happens on maybe not in this deal even. So let's just say it didn't happen in this deal, but there's proof, and a few ex-sporting directors, come out and go, yeah, we do that regularly. I will hold my hands up and say, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. The reason I can do that is because I have no personal agenda against any Aluko. Now,
Facts.
I saw some of her outbursts on some of her tweets to people, some of her DMs, and I'm never about generalizing people based on any immutable. But I also understand how she goes through a level of abuse that I will never experience. I'm not a woman, and I'm not black. And I think if you're a black woman in this industry, there are certain people that will come for you whether you are right or wrong. And if you get something wrong, people double down. I saw people sharing a clip saying she's always been bad, of her saying so and so. I can't even remember which player it was. There's 19 goals in 40 odd games, and as you can see, it's almost a goal a game. And everyone's getting mental. And I'm like, listen, we all have slip of the tongues where what we all knew she meant a goal every other game. I don't sort of feel the need ever to pull people up on the wrong word being used. I hate it on Twitter if somebody uses the wrong there. It's almost like that doesn't debunk their argument here. You're not an English teacher. You're not marking their paperwork. Yes, not everybody's as intelligent as you, maybe. Maybe not everyone can spell as well as you, but that doesn't make their opinion any less valid. So I totally get where she's coming from. However, as I said, I'll treat her as an equal because that is exactly what she is. I think what she said, maybe when she's working for Angel City at that level of football. By the way, I don't even understand. In America, do transfers even work the same way as they do in England? And I say that because none of the other American sports have transfer windows like we do. So maybe you're conflating two very different. They have a draft system, but maybe a very different. Do they have that in the MLS, the draft system? I don't know.
Yeah, they did the MLS draft. Yeah.
Maybe because there's no monetary sums being involved, maybe it's a little different. But I just don't believe at the top level of European football this has ever happened.
But Terry, even her story, if you listen to it, right, the second time around with Simon Jordan, she starts backtracking. Because she realized that, like Simon Jordan effectively says, it may have happened, but what you did is either illegal or very immoral. Like an owner, if they found out about that, would be absolutely upset. And she goes on to backtrack, effectively saying, oh, I wouldn't call it this. I would call it rather communication, and that they were always going to bid more. Like, the way she started phrasing it, she realized that what she was saying, if she was still working for that club, she'd probably get sacked. So did it happen? Maybe. But it is highly, highly suspect, man.
No, I agree. I agree. But as already stated, the abuse doesn't need to follow. And, you know, I mean, get off the I said young lady. She's the same age as me. I don't want to sound condescending, but she's young in the grand scheme of life. She's only like a year younger than me. But yeah, I still this is where it becomes a real difficult talking point, because I've always viewed things. The Terrace, you know, you've been to many of my shows, our panels, our guests, everybody very, very multicultural, different, you know, men and women. I believe I'll challenge anybody's opinion, whether whoever they are. I think there's a right and a wrong way of doing it. But yeah, the amount that the coverage, the coverage around the Rice thing has been amazing. And
can I say one more thing, by the way? One more thing. We haven't even touched on the fact that in this specific example, again, I can't speak for other examples, but this one in particular is so outrageous for me because the biggest context isn't even being spoken about here. These are teams that just a month ago were going throat for, like, they were literally at each other's throat for the Premier League title, and everyone expects them again this season to be going at each other's throat for the Premier League title. What do Manchester City gain from helping Arsenal, their biggest title challengers in the last 12 months, sign a player that will raise the ceiling of their squad and get them that much closer for the league? What does, if you truly believe that it's just between Guardiola and Arteta's friendship that's what's happening, again, it's like, it's blowing my mind that people can even fathom this, man.
Yeah, Guardiola, even if this was a done thing in football, you're not going to help a competitor like that. Again, it just doesn't add up. And that's what I think, that level of criticism was absolutely fair towards her. But I will stand by what I said earlier. Lee Gunner's view was worse.
It's up there.
Ornstein just invented it to make Arsenal look better. That's just so. Listen, I'm not like Lee. I like Lee. I rate what he does.
Ornstein Bomba. That's what he's saying. It's different when it's from Ornstein.
Yeah. He just Lee. Do you know what it is with Lee? As much as I think in his heart of hearts he wants Arsenal to win, there's a part of him that just, because he said there's no way if City get involved, we get him. Lee can never take an L. Lee has no ability.
Yeah, that's why.
So because he was wrong, instead of going, damn, I was wrong, he says, nah, there was no bid. So in his mind, he was still right. Do you get what I mean? So yeah, it's an interesting one. But there's a few super chats here. First one.